like the year before, a couple of years before. So, in their fourth year here, do you think Baylor is going to rebound, basically?
I do.
Dave Aranda's a good coach.
I think they're going to have to get more out of their passing game, Blake Shapen. The defense has got to get back to normal, the secondary, and return to their 2021 form. Last year was a down year for Baylor. I think if I remember correctly, it might have been the TCU game. They lost on the last second field goal where TCU ran on the field and scored really quick. And that was just a little minor print in what their season was. They had all kinds of, they had a few injuries, had a few guys out. It was a total failure, I think, last year to me. I don't know how you look at it, but I think, last year was a failure to an extent because the year before that, they go and win the Big 12 championship. So.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. Keys to the seasons, they got to have more third down stops this year. They were pretty bad on third down conversions and stops last year, and they absolutely have to get better at that to turn their season around from last year and have a better season this year. So, what do you think, John?
That's pretty much my keys to the season.
Yeah, they gave up 46% on third downs last year, and that's got to change if they're going to turn their season around.
Mm-hmm.
So then from there, we'll go to the top transfer in and the biggest loss out for Baylor. I've got top transfer in is offensive lineman that's probably going to play either center or guard, Barrington from BYU. And then they lost an offensive guard to Florida. Mazuka, I don't know how you say his last name, but Mike.
The biggest thing with Baylor is their offensive line is going to be revamped, but they did bring back Reese at running back, so they're going to have some key spots there. I think just totally. The offense needs to get back to where they were. The defense will do their thing, but the offense has got to get back to the passing game that they once was and do what Baylor does. And I think that's the biggest key to the year.
Yeah, so with that said, my key player is their quarterback, Blake Shapen. He's a junior. I think with more than likely an improved offensive line, and the receiving core that they do have some veterans on the receiving core. I believe that Blake Shapen, their junior QB, is going to be a very, very key player for Baylor to have a better season this year for Dave Aranda.
I agree with you.
All right, key game. What do you have as a key game?
I'll let you do this one. I'll do the next one.
I can tell you mine. My key game is September 23rd at home against Texas.
Yeah.
It's the Big 12 opener. It's the Big 12 opener for Baylor, and it's at home, and it's against Texas. The Big 12 is going through a bunch of changes. And we got some new teams to talk about in the Big 12. We got Texas and Oklahoma that's leaving. Next year, we're going to have even more teams come in. So the Big 12 is coming through a whole bunch of changes.
Yeah, it's
going through a statement game against Texas.
Yeah, it's going through a process. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a statement game at home against Texas in Waco is going to be a key game in order for them to turn their season and have a little better season than last year.
Yeah, I agree. And then where we'll go with the win totals, I'll be honest with you. The offense has got to get better. Dave Aranda, he's known for his defense, but the offense has got to get. It's just got to get better, plain and simple. So I'm gonna be lenient.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna give them 7 wins. I just don't see them going over that.
All right. So, well, let's look at their schedule real quick. They play Texas State and Utah at home, Long Island at home. Then they play Texas at home, at UCF, Texas Tech at home, at Cincinnati, Iowa State at home, Houston at home, at Kansas State, at TCU, and West Virginia at home to end the year. So I set their win total at 7. That's where I set their win total. Was 7 wins. You already said you're going to pick them to go 7, so you've got them 7-5.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's probably pretty accurate. That's about where I would have them too, is 7-5 on the year. They were 6-7 last year. So if they could go 7-5, that would be a little bit improvement from last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to move on to a new Big 12 team. We got BYU. BYU has been independent, and they have been playing a pretty stout schedule as an independent. You know, last year they played a bunch of foes.
It's pretty stout again
So
this year.
they're kind of used to playing a tougher schedule. Yeah, and they're kind of used to playing a tough schedule. So, you know, BYU is in their 8th year with their head coach. He's 56-34 in 8 years. Good. I mean, that's a pretty good record for them.
It's not bad.
You know, of course, they are moving into the Big 12, and it's a, you know, it's a different animal moving into the Big 12 this year.
Mm-hmm. I think the keys to the season is going to be their defense. The strength of the squad should be their offense. You know, they get Kidd and Slofus, and they get running back Aiden Robbins. So they reload on offense, but I feel like their defense needs to be a lot better than it was a year ago.
Yeah, so that's one of my keys. I'm gonna give you a stat. In 5 of their losses last year, they had 0 sacks. They have to generate and find a pass rush. That's one of the keys that I have for them for BYU is to find a consistent pass rush. Like I said, in 5 of their losses last year, they had zero sacks. So biggest transfer in and transfer out. You've already mentioned Slovis from Pittsburgh. Prior to that, at USC, and he was a starter at both places. So he's coming in, and I would expect him to be able to fill some pretty big shoes, you know, out of the quarterback position from last year. Their quarterback was drafted like in the 4th or 5th round in the NFL draft, and Slovis has some pretty big shoes to fill, but I think he's capable of doing that.
Yeah, I do too.
They lost an offensive guard. Barrington to Baylor. I think that's going to hurt. That's probably going to be one of their key losses.
Mm-hmm. I'm
All
on
right,
a
key players.
well. Some of their players, I think Slovis will be the key to this team. The quarterback, what he does is how they're going to go, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I mean,
if I
I
remember
agree with
correctly,
you. I'm going to go. I'm going to go under Slovis. I'm going to go with the center. He's a senior, Maite, Mate, I think is how
yeah,
you
mate,
say his
yeah, it's
name.
mate, yeah,
He's a senior. He's 6'2", 300 pounds. Yeah, he's 6'2", 300 pounds, and he's going to be under center, and that's who Slovis is going to, have to build a rapport with at center.
yeah.
He's going to be a good one for them on the offensive line, and I think, between Slovis and the center mate, that's going to be an absolute key players, both of them.
Mm-hmm. I'll
Key
go this
game
one.
for
I'll go
BYU.
this. I'll go this one. Let me go this one.
All right.
I think
All
it's
right. Who you got for
September
key game?
16th against Arkansas. And I'll tell you why. It's because the following week they play at Kansas, then they come home and play Cincinnati, and then they go to TCU. Because if you lose that Arkansas game, and then you're going to face Kansas, a team that's improved from a year, they went to a bowl game last year.
Is
You
it at
can't
home? Is it at home? Is the
the
Arkansas
Kansas
game at home for him?
it's a home. No, it's at Arkansas. So
At
that's what
Arkansas?
I'm saying.
That's going to be
A
a tough
loss
environment.
there, a loss there, and you're behind the eight ball, in my opinion, in the Big 12.
Well, I had their key game at the next week at Kansas, September the 23rd. That's what I had. I think they can probably afford to lose an out of conference game to Arkansas away.
They can't
But
afford to lose
Kansas,
going on, in the Big 12. No.
yeah, but Kansas is going to be, they opened the season well. They're going to be a decent team, especially at home, and that's
Yeah,
going to be a big game for them, I think.
it
So
is.
that's what I had as a key game. All right, so let's take a look at their schedule. They start out with Sam Houston, Southern Utah at home, at Arkansas, at Kansas, home Cincinnati, at TCU, Texas Tech at home, at Texas, and then at West Virginia, Iowa State at home, Oklahoma at home, and then at Oklahoma State. That's their schedule. They went 8-5 last year, and
They're going to get introduced.
I have their win total. I have their win total set at 6.5.
They're going to get introduced to the Big 12 really quick.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got a tough schedule. I'll be honest with you. I've got them going 6-6. I set their win total at 6.5, and I've got them going 6-6. And that's just because, they play at TCU, they play at Arkansas, they play at Kansas, they play Texas, they play Oklahoma, they play, at Oklahoma State.
If they're going to get 7 wins out of this, they're going to have to knock off somebody they're not supposed to.
They're going to have to win one of those tough games. Absolutely. They're going to have to win at Kansas or at Arkansas, one of the games that we were talking about.
I'm with you though. I think 6 wins is pretty much the ceiling for them.
They went 8-5, and BYU's been a lot better 8, 9, 10 win team the last few years, but they're a step up in the Big 12, and we'll see exactly what happens. So the next team that we're talking about, they weren't independent. They're coming from the AAC, and this is Cincinnati. This is a big step for them, if you ask me. They also have a first-year head coach with Satterfield. And I haven't been all that impressed with Satterfield. He was at Louisville and didn't do all that well, in my opinion, taking over a program that was, minus right after Lamar Jackson, and you know what I mean? And he took over a program that was kind of up there, and he didn't do so well. And now he's in his first year at Cincinnati. Scott Satterfield, his overall record is 76-48 in 11 years. But most of that was at smaller schools. Yeah.
The biggest question I have on this team is they're only returning 7 starters. And I know you're going to get to the transfer, but they brought in Emory Jones, former Florida Gator, Arizona State. He's going to be their quarterback. I think they also brought in I can't remember. It's off the top of my head. They brought in a couple wide receivers to the wide receiving core out of the transfer portal. But I just don't – in some preseason rankings, they've got Cincinnati ranked 12th in the Big 12.
I've seen them as low as 13 in some of them.
I just don't think this is the year, Scott Satterfield.
So in his first season at Cincinnati and in the Big 12 and a big upgrade in schedule and everything, I think it's going to be a tough ride. But keys to the season, their offensive line play has to be far, far better because they are stepping up to the Big 12. So I think that is going to be a huge, huge deal for them.
If we're being honest, their defense kept them in the games last year. Their defense was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. They've, absolutely.
Under Fickle, they always had a good defense.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I mean, that's how they got to the 2 years ago and got to the college football playoff, really, is they had an outstanding defense. So transfer in and transfer out. You've already mentioned Emory Jones transferring in from Arizona State. But they got an edge guy from Utah State. Grasaic. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name.
Yeah, their front four was probably one of the best in football last year. So I think they're not going to lose as much on the defensive side, but their offense is where I think they're going to have some troubles.
They lost their quarterback, Ben Bryant, to Northwestern. He transferred to Northwestern, but they did bring in Emory Jones. So, key player, I've got DeAndre Buford, offensive tackle, junior. He's 6'3", 312 pounds, looks the part of a NFL draft guy, to be honest with you, and he needs to play like that on that offensive line for that improvement that I was talking about. All right, key game for Cincinnati. I've got September 23rd at home against Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty huge game.
That's what I've got. I think that'll be their Big 12 opener. Their very first ever Big 12 game is going to be against Oklahoma in Cincinnati. And, Cincinnati has had a heck of a run under Fickle. And, 2 years ago, Oklahoma come to town. They might have been able to beat Oklahoma. You know what I mean? And it's going to be an awful big statement, I think, for Cincinnati to hang in that game. So I've got a key game, especially with it being at home. So that's
tell you, I'll be honest. I got their win total at 5. I just don't see them having the year that they had the last few years. It's going to be you don't judge the first-year head coach on his first year. You judge him about the second or third year. You don't try to get lose your
I
mind.
agree with you. It's going to be Satterfield's first year and their first year in the Big 12, so it's a big step up on top of
big
that.
step. Yeah.
So their schedule looks like this: they play Eastern Kentucky at home, at Pittsburgh. They play Miami. They play Oklahoma at home, at BYU, Iowa State at home, Baylor at home, at Oklahoma State, home against UCF, at Houston, and at West Virginia. So they do miss Texas Tech and Texas and TCU. You know, they don't play.
There's a chance there they can get 6, but they're going to have to upset somebody, I think.
They don't play TCU. They don't play Texas Tech. They don't play Texas. They don't play Kansas State. So, I mean, their schedule looks halfway decent. And because of that, I had set their win total at 6. Just looking at their schedule, I had set their win total at 6. And I think that's what I'm going to go with is 6 and 6.
Mm-hmm. That's what I had.
But I'm saying that because they miss a few of the bigger
teams, yeah.
Big 12 teams. All right, so our next school is a new school as well, and they're in the same situation. They're also coming from the AAC, and that's Houston. Houston was 8-5 last year.
The biggest question mark.
Dana Holgerson is their head coach. He's 27-20 at Houston, and they've had a couple of really good years. Okay,
the offense I think is going to be okay, but the defense loses. Well, they bring back only 3 starters off the defense from last year, and they did bring in Donovan Smith, the transfer from Texas Tech, the quarterback. So I think the offense will be fine. The defense wasn't bad last year. I think they only gave up 18, 19 points a game, but they still had some games where they just didn't really play that well. But at the end of the day, I think this Houston team will be fine. There's been a lot of, rankings that I've seen 13, 14, preseason rankings. So I think they're going to probably be in the same boat as Cincinnati. So,
yeah, I agree with you.
Or around that win total. Yeah.
Keys to the season, I think they have to pass the ball, complete a lot of passes. Their offense is what has kept them winning games, and I think they are going to have to get in the Big 12 and probably try to do some shootouts this year. I mean, honestly, I think that's kind of where they're going to have to play this year. In their first year, they got Donovan Smith from Texas Tech transferred in, and they lost McCaskill, running back, to Colorado, is their biggest loss. Key players. I'm going to give you a stat. So 8 Houston Cougar games last year were decided by 7 points or less. All right. 4 of those were decided by 3 points or less.
Yeah, but they go up a step in competition this year, though.
And they lost a lot of games on some missed field goals.
Yeah, they had some issues last year with the field goals.
They did. They lost some games on missed field goals, and because of that, Jack Martin is their place kicker, field goal kicker. He's a senior. Dude's got to improve. They can't be doing that in the Big 12, or they're going to get blown out. All right, key game. And this is going to sound strange probably, but I have their key game, the first game of the year against UTSA. UTSA is no slouch.
Mm-mm.
And
if I remember correctly, UTSA goes to Tennessee too.
they do.
So that's
About week 4, 3 or 4.
I think. 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I think.
3 or 4. They do. But they start the season out at Houston, and with their upgrade in schedule, Houston, I'm saying, they can't afford to lose to UTSA at home.
No.
First game of the year. So that's what I have as their key game of the season. And then let's take a look at their schedule. Like I said, they open up UTSA at home. Then they play at Rice. Then they play TCU at home. Then they play Sam Houston. Then they play at Texas Tech, West Virginia at home, Texas at home, at Kansas State, at Baylor, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State at home, and at UCF. So they have a stretch in there where they play at Texas Tech, West Virginia at home, Texas at home, at Kansas State, and at Baylor. Because of that, they did go 8-5 last year. I've got their win total set at 6.
That's about right.
Do you think they go under, or can they possibly go over? I'm going to be honest with you. I have them at 5-7.
That's pretty much where I had them.
I have them at 5-7. You know, if they could win one of these really tough games at Kansas State, you know, at Baylor, at Oklahoma State, you know, maybe they can go bowling, beat UCF at the end of the season or something. I'm not sure, but that's where I have them.
Yeah, I just don't think they're going to be able to withstand that schedule.
Yeah.
So,
all right, we will move on to Iowa State. That is the next team on the list. And if you're wondering, I'm doing these in alphabetical order, or at least I think I am. Matt Campbell is their coach. He is in his 8th year. They are 48. He is 48-42, 46-42. They were 4-2. They were 4-8 last year.
And 2, if I remember correctly, they lost their quarterback, and then they lost their running back due to a gambling probe.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of uncertainty in Ames today right now.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to get back to running the ball. That's one of the keys to the seasons that I have, is running the ball. Iowa State plays great defense. They have defense, and it's a tough place to play at home. You know, when you go there, it's a tough place to play. Iowa State is always. Matt Campbell's done a really good job until last year, run into some bumps last year, and you know, if they can generate a little more pass rush and fix their running game, I think they can possibly go bowling. But
I think too, their offensive line is going to be, I think, their weakness. And I think, you know, losing Xavier Hutchinson to the pros, that's going to hurt them a little bit. So I feel like, you know, on defense, they're pretty much going to be who they are. John Heacock, he's probably one of the better defensive coordinators in the Big 12. He does a really good job with those guys. But the offense is where they're going to need to step up this year to do what they want to do.
Biggest loss and top transfer in. They got a wide receiver from Eastern Kentucky, actually, Jaden Higgins, wide receiver. I think is going to be a key for them on offense. And then they lost a cornerback to Virginia, Tavon Tavon Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
They lost him to Virginia. He's a cornerback, but he's 6'4", 215 cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's pretty tough. Key players. I've got their edge rusher, Joey Peterson,
Mm-hmm.
listed as.
That's the one I was going to put. He's probably one of the keys to the season, really.
Yeah, I've got him listed as an absolute key player for them. They have to do a little more pass rush. I mentioned that a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he is a player that could absolutely do that, replacing Will McDonald
Mm-hmm.
and some players that they lost last year. So I think he's going to be – and he needs to step up.
He does.
And be that type of player.
I think the key game to me is the Iowa game. I mean, I know we say that every year, but, that's a key.
It's their rival game, and it's what, second game of the year or something like that?
Second game, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the key game to the season, I think.
All right. I had at home Oklahoma State, September 23rd is what I had. If they could get that first big win in the Big 12 this season, and it be a home game, and that's always a tough place to play against Oklahoma State, against the Cowboys. I think that would be an absolute monster of a win for them.
It would.
And kind of set their season up. All right, let's take a look at their schedule. They start out Northern Iowa. They get Iowa at home. They play at Ohio, Oklahoma State at home. Then they play at Oklahoma, TCU at home, at Cincinnati, at Baylor, Kansas at home, at BYU, Texas at home, and at Kansas State. So the last half of their season, you really step up in competition.
Yeah.
They play Oklahoma and TCU and at Baylor and Kansas and at BYU and Texas, Kansas State.
Here's my thing. I'm not trying to get into the whole issue with them with their whole gambling probe and thing, but there's a lot hanging over that, and there's a lot hanging on this season, and there's a lot going on in Ames right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think that can be a distraction a little bit to some of the players. But at the same time, you got to focus on football. You get what I'm saying? You can't worry about –
I got the win total set at 6.
You can't worry about the outside noise and the drama. So if we're being realistic, I think 6 wins is good, 7 if they upset one of those teams later in the year. But I got them at six wins. I don't think they go over that, though.
That's where I got them at 6-6, which would be an improvement from 8-4 from, last year.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is Kansas.
Yep.
Kansas started out last year and had the whole world talking about them.
Yeah,
all of college football. I mean, seriously. Jalen Daniels got hurt and their season just tanked. And, they started out 5-0. They were ranked. They beat a couple of teams they wasn't supposed to. And then Jalen Daniels got hurt, and they finished the year 1-6 or something like that.
The biggest thing with this team this year for them to really compete for a chance to get to the conference title game is, man, you're going to have to improve the defense.
Yeah, but that offense is fun to watch.
The offense, when it's humming, Jalen Daniels is fun to watch. But, man, the defense gave up 37 points a game last year.
I know.
That's just too much.
Well,
And that ain't going to win you many games. Now, you might have a few
sometimes in the
shootout
Big
games.
12, they try to outscore each other. You know that.
Yeah, exactly. But the biggest thing, the defensive front, they really struggled last year to generate a pass rush. And even this year, they're thin on experience in that regard. So they're going to have some guys step up on defense if they want to take this next step. Because the offense is going to be fine. The offense is going to score points. But my biggest concern with this Kansas team, if you want to take that next step and get to the conference championship game, you're going to have to get this defense under control. You can't.
They finished the year in a wild bowl game against Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl, and it was 55-53, and Arkansas beat them at the end. I mean, it was a wild game. I don't know if anybody remembers. I don't know if anybody remembers that game or not, but if you watched the Liberty Bowl last year, it was a wild game.
It was.
So Lance Leopold is the coach. He's in his third year. I think he's done a good job turning this program around.
You know what turned it around?
What's that?
It was the year before that when they beat Texas.
Yeah.
And it felt like Kansas was on to something. And then they started out 5-0. College game day went to Kansas. We've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, absolutely. And they,
this ain't college basketball, everybody.
Right. Yeah. They were ranked.
This is football. So.
All right. So keys to the season. What you kind of goes along with what you were talking about. For me, I got stop the run. Stop the run, man. Like in the Big 12, they averaged 209 yards a game giving up. I mean, wow. Okay.
Pretty bad.
Yeah. All right. So top transfer in, I've got Logan Brown from Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
He is an offensive tackle. And then they lost a linebacker, Gilliard, to UConn, and I got him as the biggest loss. All right, key players. Besides Jalen Daniels, everybody knows Jalen Daniels is going to be an absolute key player for Kansas to be any good.
Mm-hmm.
Besides him, I've got a defensive tackle. They got two defensive tackles, Withers and Taylor. And I think those two defensive tackles, stopping the run, what I was just talking about, improving that defense, those two defensive tackles absolutely have to play and be a beast in the middle of that defensive line.
It's got to change for the better because last year was just too much yardage being thrown around.
They got a Minnesota transfer, Gabe Keys, in there in the middle on that defensive line as well. So they have some pieces to improve. I'm not saying they're going to be the top in the nation, but they have some pieces to improve. And if they can find some improvement, then I think they can climb the ladder a little bit in the Big 12.
I agree.
All right, key game. I actually have at home against BYU on September 23rd. Again, it'll be the Big 12 opener. It's a home game. It's against a new guy coming in with BYU, a new team coming into the Big 12. Kansas opened the year last year very well. They have a chance this year to possibly be 4-0 and open the season like that. And I think it would be a key win at home if they can beat BYU on September 23rd.
That's a key game to me.
Yeah. All right, so let me look at the schedule. Again, they went 6-7 last year, so they finished the year 1-7. By the way, just keep that in mind. But they start out Missouri State at home, then they play Illinois at home, at Nevada, BYU at home, at Texas, UCF at home, at Oklahoma State, Oklahoma at home, at Iowa State, Texas Tech at home, Kansas State at home, and at Cincinnati is how they finished the year. I've got their win total set at 6.5. They went 6-7 last year. Do you think they can go over?
I think there's a chance for 7 games.
I think they can go 7-5 and have an improvement.
I do too.
And if they could beat Illinois and at home and Cincinnati away, they might get to 8 wins. I mean, it's possible. But
it is.
So I've got them at 7-5, which would be an improvement. And I think that's where they will probably land. I want to say this though: if Jalen Daniels stays healthy, I think he. I'll wait to the end, but I think he could be special in the Big 12 this year if he can stay healthy. Problem with that is he likes to get out of the pocket and run a lot and stuff, and he's dynamic with it. But sometimes those quarterbacks get hurt.
They do.
All right, we're moving on to Kansas State. Surprise, surprise. If you don't remember, Kansas State actually won the Big 12 last year.
They did.
Everybody remembers TCU, but Kansas State actually won the Big 12 last year, if you don't remember.
They did.
Chris Kleiman is the coach. 4 years, he is 30-20. They went 10-4 last year, 7-2 in the Big 12. And they have a dynamic offense as well. There's a lot of good offenses in the Big 12.
There is.
All right. Keys to the season. They got to keep the turnovers low. They did that last year for the most part. They had 3 games where they had multiple turnovers, and they were 0-3 in those 3 games.
I got to plug my computer in. Hold on just a second.
All right. They had 3 games last year where they had multiple turnovers in a single game, and they were 0-3 in those games. So I don't think this team is capable of overcoming a lot of turnovers. So I think they need to keep their turnovers low, which they did last year, by the way. Top transfer in and biggest loss. The top transfer in to me is Treshaun Ward, running back from Florida State. Treshaun Ward, he is going to be replacing a legend, honestly, and he's playing in the NFL now. But Ward's a good back. He was part of that 3-headed monster at Florida State last year, and I think he's going to come in. He's averaged 6.5 yards a carry, has 11 scores. So, I mean, expect to see a whole lot of Ward. And then their biggest loss is they lost a offensive tackle named Clem to Washington. That's who I have as their biggest loss. What are you doing over there?
I'm trying to fix something on my computer.
All right. Key players. I got an edge rusher, Khalid Duke. He's a senior. He looks the part of a possible NFL player. Big time outside linebacker. But his job is going to be edge pass rusher. So he has to be able to get to the quarterback. So I've got him listed. There's some other players that could be named there for Kansas State as well. But key game for Kansas State. I've got October 6th at Oklahoma State. The road game against Texas is going to be tough. But, if Kansas State has hopes to get to November the 4th, with still some Big 12 championships hopes alive, they have to win October 6th at Oklahoma State if they still have hopes for a Big 12 championship. So that's the one I've picked, is playing the Cowboys at home.
Yeah, that's the key game.
And I'm going to take a look at their schedule with you guys. They open up Southeast Missouri State, then they play Troy, and don't knock on Troy. Troy is going to be a tougher game than most people are going to give them credit for. At Missouri, then they play home UCF, home Oklahoma, or at Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech, TCU at home, Houston at home, at Texas. That's that November 4th game I was talking about. Baylor at home, at Kansas, and Iowa State at home. So the middle part of their schedule, when you play at Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech, TCU at home, then you get Houston at home, then at Texas, then Baylor at home. I mean, that's a pretty rough schedule in there. And like I said, if they have hopes of still having hopes November the 4th for a Big 12 championship, they got to win a couple of those games. And Oklahoma State,
I think they'll win 8, though. I think that's the.
That's where I have their win total set at 8. Mm-hmm. They went 10-4 last year, so
which Gundy's going to have to rebuild, though, because he lost a few key pieces. So, which I think he'll do. Did you know that I didn't realize this? He is the most consistent coach in America when it comes to playing 500.
We're getting to him maybe now, a couple of teams away, I think. But yeah, Gundy's a good one. I've got Kansas State at 8-4 as well in the regular season. That's where I've got them at. At 8-4, they probably won't be winning the Big 12. So, but 8-4 is a good season. All right. Then we're getting to the Oklahoma Sooners.
Boomer Sooner.
All right. We're getting to the Sooners now, guys. So they had a rough year last year. First time in recent memory that I can remember they actually had a losing season. They went 6-7. 3-6 in the Big 12. Brent Venables is now in his second year, had a very rough first year with them. And they're in their last year of the Big 12. Do you know that since the conception of the Big 12, do you know that Oklahoma has won half of the Big 12 championships? And you go back and look at the Big Eight, and they almost won half of the Big Eight championships. Very close. They're like 46%, something like that, of the Big Eight championships. That's consistency right there. You was talking about consistency. That's consistency. And Oklahoma's not going to put up with another losing season. Brent's got to get the ball rolling. I like Brent Venables. He's a good coach, but he's got to get the ball rolling at Boomer Sooner.
He can't have another year like he had last year. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
The recruiting seems to be going well, but now you got to turn that in and turn it up on the field.
You got to show it on the field, yeah.
Yeah. So, keys to the season. It's gonna sound like I'm gonna beat a dead horse here with most of these teams, I think. Stop the run already.
Yeah, it was bad.
mean, Lord have mercy. Brent, to be a defensive coordinator and be such a good one. Last year, Oklahoma's defense was horrendous.
Yeah, it's pretty tough last year.
I mean, it was horrendous. And they have got to improve their defense. And that's going to start up front. Stop the run already. For real. All right. Transfer in, biggest loss. Transfer in, I have defensive end from Wake Forest, Bothroyd.
Yeah. I think their defense is what's going to be the key to the season, I think. Because their offense is going to –
They lost a linebacker to Houston.
Their offense, to me, is going to be fine. It's just at the end of the day, stop the daggone run game, man. Texas,
you can't be giving up 45, 50 points, 38 points every game.
What was it last year? Texas beat them like 50-something was it 3 or 7?
Nothing. They didn't score
nothing.
Zero.
They didn't score a point.
It was a goose egg, man. Nothing. It was Zippo.
It was over by halftime. Robinson had a field day, man. He ran wild.
I think that was a game that Dylan Gabriel was hurt. He was out.
I believe it was. Yeah.
He was out a few games last year. And I believe that was one of the games that he was out.
I believe it was. Yeah.
All right. Key player. I've got Walter Roos, offensive tackle. He's a senior. There's plenty of good transfers coming in. They've done a good job in the transfer portal, but I've got him listed as a key player.
So a minute ago we did Kansas State, and I thought we was doing Oklahoma State. I got carried away because I was on another. I had my mind in another place. My bad.
Yeah. Yeah, we were doing Kansas State.
I need to get on target, man.
All right. So this Roos guy, he's 6'6", 315, looks exactly like an NFL offensive tackle, and he needs to play like one.
I agree.
Front. All right. Key game. I mean, it doesn't get any more key than Oklahoma versus Texas, right?
No, it's crucial.
It's in Dallas, of course, and it's October the 7th. And we just mentioned they got absolutely annihilated last year in this game. And Texas looks the part this year. I'm usually not on board with Texas, and I'm always thinking they're going to show and falter just like they always do. But I'm going to say Texas looks the part this year. They really do.
They really do. Yeah.
So that game for Oklahoma to show something and to compete and hang with them and play in that game and not get trounced like they did last year is going to be big for them.
It's going to be crucial, yeah.
Yeah. I think so. So Dylan Gabriel, I mentioned him. He's going to be a solid player. He's got to stay healthy. And, they brought in a bunch of transfers, and Venables is going to try to turn this thing around. So let's take a look.
I'll tell you another key stat for them, though, is they was 0-5 last year, Oklahoma, in one-run games, if I'm not mistaken, in one-score games. I'm thinking baseball.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's not bad because it tells you that they're not far off. They're competing.
So let's take a look at their schedule. They start out September the 2nd, Arkansas State, SMU at home, at Tulsa, at Cincinnati, Iowa State at home, Texas and Dallas, and then UCF at home, at Kansas, at Oklahoma State, which might be the last Bedlam game, by the way. Mm-hmm. West Virginia at home, at BYU, and then TCU at home. I have their win total set at 8.5.
Yeah, that's basically where I'm going with it. I don't think this is going to be a playoff type team, but I think it's a team that can go to a big bowl game.
Yeah, I think they're going to be much improved. I've actually got them 9-3. They could go 8-4. But I've actually got them at 9-3. That's where I've got Oklahoma this year.
Mm-hmm.
Where you got them at?
I got them about 8-4, 9-3, something like that.
Okay. Well, that'll be an improvement. I'm not sure 8-4 will make the Oklahoma fans happy. 9-3, I think, would be a little bit better probably for them to have a chance to go to a bowl game and get to that 10th win. I think would be a better showing for them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now we're doing Oklahoma State.
All right, now we're good.
All right, so Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy is in his 19th year, and you were talking about consistency with him. Do you know that Mike Gundy, minus his first year at Oklahoma State, 18 straight years he has not had a losing season?
That's impeccable.
18 straight years he has not had a losing season.
In one of those years, he should have went to the national championship. His
record is 156-75 in 19 seasons.
If you remember correctly, was it 07? I can't remember. They should have went to the championship national title. Remember they lost to Iowa State on the road? They was undefeated and lost on the road. It's when they had Brandon Whedon, remember?
Yeah. They've had a couple of really good runs and should have been they've only won one Big 12 title in that time, though.
Yeah. That's amazing, to be honest.
Again, keys to the season for Oklahoma State, run defense has got to hold up. They wasn't as bad as the two that I mentioned before, but, they didn't hold up well in the Big 12.
No, they had a struggle last year.
Yeah. They went 4-5 in the Big 12 last year.
The offense kept them in the games quite a bit.
And then another key is they got to replace Spencer Sanders.
Yeah,
who is now after 4 years at Oklahoma State, he's now at Ole Miss.
Yeah,
and probably going to be a backup. And yeah. I don't understand that move. Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week.
I really don't understand that move. I don't understand how you go from being he's top 3 or 4 all-time leader in passing yards and everything at Oklahoma State. And how do you leave there and go to be a backup at Ole Miss? I don't understand that move. I'm going to be honest with you. So, biggest loss, to me, absolutely has to be Spencer Sanders. There's just no way around it, if you ask me. As far as I've got a offensive tackle, Dalton Cooper from Texas State, as transfer in. Just kind of shore up some of the holes that they had on the offensive line last year. Key player. I'm going to give you mine. It's Alan Bowman, quarterback.
Yeah.
After replacing Spencer Sanders, who's been their starter, I think 3 years. He has to step in and run that offense.
Yeah, he's going to have to. He's going to have to make plays.
Bowman started at Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Spent 3 seasons there. Then he went to Michigan.
Yeah.
And now he is at Oklahoma State for his last year. And he has to show up and show out and replace Spencer Sanders.
Yeah.
For them to do anything.
Yeah.
Key game I have at Iowa State, September the 23rd. Again, that'll be the Big 12 opener. It's an away game. Iowa State is a tough place to play. I had this game for Iowa State. I also have it for Oklahoma State because I think it's big for each team.
It's big for both.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Let's take a look at their schedule. Oklahoma State plays Central Arkansas at Arizona State, the second game of the season, which is actually a big game as well. South Alabama at home, at Iowa State, Kansas State at home, Kansas at home, at West Virginia, Cincinnati at home, Oklahoma at home, UCF away, Houston away, and BYU at home. So if you ask me, their schedule is semi-manageable.
Yeah.
They don't play Texas. They don't play Texas Tech. They don't play Baylor. They get the Kansas schools and they get the Oklahoma.
They get a few of those at home, if I'm not mistaken.
They do. Kansas State's at home, Kansas at home, and Oklahoma's at home.
Oklahoma's at home, yeah.
So their schedule is, in my opinion, favorable. Because of that, I have their win total set at 7.5.
Yeah.
And I actually have them going 8-4.
Yeah, I do too. I think 8-4 is probably about right for Oklahoma State.
They went 7-6 last year, so an 8-4 regular season would be an improvement. And when you look at their schedule, I think that's manageable.
I think it is.
All right, so then we're going to get to TCU. TCU, people are going to remember, went to the playoffs last year. They're going to remember that they beat Michigan and then got absolutely slaughtered by Georgia. That's what people are going to remember. But I'm going to say this. They went 12-0.
Sonny Dykes is one of the best coaches in America, I think.
Yeah, and Sonny Dykes was in his first year. They went 13-2 overall, 9-0 in the Big 12, but they lost the Big 12 championship game and then got slaughtered 65-7 in the championship game against Georgia. They were without their running back and some key players.
Well, and I'm going to be honest with you. Chandler Morris, he'll be the quarterback this year. And if he has a breakout year, like everybody's thinking he will, they won't miss a beat offensively. Now the defense has a few holes that they need to plug up, but other than that, this TCU team's got an opportunity to win another Big 12 championship. And in many polls that I've seen, they've got them ranked 4th in the Big 12. I haven't got to my sleeper yet. I posted about it last night. Team I think will win the Big 12, a sleeper team. We haven't got to them yet, but once we get to them, you're pretty much going to know who I'm talking about.
All right, we'll get to it.
I think you know who I'm going at, but TCU is going to have another fun team this year. It's just all about, can they replace Kendra Miller, Quentin Johnston? They lost quite a bit on the offensive side of the ball, so it's just going to be interesting to see how they manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they lost their offensive coordinator.
They did.
On top of
that. That's tough to do.
If they can somehow step in and kind of continue that offense, that'll be an absolute miracle, really, if you ask me. Because now Sonny Dykes is an offensive guy, and when you run the air raid, you can kind of keep up with things like that a lot of times. So we'll see. But that is going to be an absolute key. They lost a ton of stuff on offense, and they're going to have to figure out a way to replace that and still run a high-powered offense like they did last year.
Yeah, I agree.
Trey Sanders, running back from Alabama, transferred in. He's going to be an absolute key for them to replace Miller that they lost. And they also lost their backup quarterback, which would have been their backup quarterback, Sam Jackson, to California. He's a sophomore. He was a sophomore. He transferred to California. So now they're having to find another backup. But Jackson's a good player. He's a 4-star kid, and that's a big loss for them. He wouldn't have been the starter, but, it's if something happens, because Morris has been hurt before.
He has. That's the biggest question mark I have is, can Chandler Morris stay healthy? That's the biggest question.
Yeah. So key player, you've already mentioned him a couple of times. Chandler Morris, that's who I have as their key player. Replacing Max. I always want to say Dugan. It's Duggan.
Max Duggan.
Yeah. It's Duggan, right? I always want to say Dugan. I don't know why, but Duggan.
Hacksaw Jim Dugan.
When I see that, I want to say Dugan, not Duggan. I don't know why.
Duggan.
But anyway,
Duggan.
Replacing him is going to be a monster, especially when you lose Garrett Riley to Clemson as well. So, Chandler Morris, and he was named the starter this time last year.
Yeah.
And actually started the first game of the year and got hurt.
And then he never saw the field again.
Right. But he was named the starter over Duggan. See? Duggan. He was named the starter over Duggan last year, this time of year, and started the first game. So, all right, key game. I did that last year too. I said it every time and missed his name up every time. I've got Kansas at Kansas State, October the 21st, as a key game for TCU. That's who beat them in the championship game last year.
Yeah,
Kansas State.
I think that's a big game for them.
Yeah. And, to have to go to their place the 21st of October and play that game, that's going to be a big, big game for them, I think.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at their schedule. They start the season out against Colorado at home, September the 2nd. Then they play Nichols at home, at Houston, SMU at home, at West Virginia, or at home, West Virginia, at Iowa State, BYU at home, at Kansas State, at Texas Tech, Texas at home, Baylor at home, and then end at Oklahoma. So that is a rough November. They played at Texas Tech, home against Texas, home Baylor, and at Oklahoma. And the last game in October is at Kansas State.
Yeah, it's tough.
So that's 5 games that are tough games for TCU to end the year on. Because of that, I've got their win total set at 8. I was looking at their, the way that their season ends, and do you think they can actually get above that?
I think this year is 8-5 at the most.
I mean, regular season I got them 8-4, but towards the end of the year, they start the season out. I've got them winning a bunch of games, but towards the end of the year, in that tougher part of the schedule, I've got them losing some games.
Yep. I think 8-5 is probably.
All right. Then we got Texas. Last year in the Big 12 for Texas, Steve Sarkisian. He's in his 3rd year. He's 13-12 with Texas. I'm not that big of a Sark fan. He's a great recruiter, gets top-notch kids. I just don't think he puts it together on the field all that well. He didn't do it at USC. He has not done it at Texas in 2 years. They went 8-5 last year, which is not as good as what they should have been. And I'm just not that impressed with Sark. However, I am going to say this. When you look at their roster and the 5-star kids that they have, like, they have a slew of talent, man.
They do.
Like, their talent level, if you look at all the Big 12, their talent level is by far, I mean, even Oklahoma, I think their talent level looks like they should be the Big 12 winner.
They do. It's a fact.
I mean, keys to the season.
There we go.
I think they've got to run the ball well.
They do.
Losing Robinson is a big loss. Of course, they've got people, behind him, but Robinson's a special talent.
Yeah, he
was drafted in the top 10.
Yeah,
and running backs don't get drafted even in the first round, much less top 10.
He's a generational talent.
Yeah. So, I think they're going to have the quarterback play. I mean, they got 3 outstanding 5-star kids.
Their wide receiver room is absolutely.
And their wide receiver room is ridiculous. Okay. I mean, it's ridiculous. All right. So offense is going to be there, but they've got to be able to run the ball and look like Texas at times.
Yep.
So I'm gonna say that's a key. Transfer in. I've got wide receiver Mitchell from Georgia.
Yeah.
They lost an edge to LSU. Starts with an O, and I don't know how to pronounce that last name, so I'm not even going to try. I'll just butcher it.
Yeah.
But he's an edge guy, and he's gone off to LSU. Um, Key players. Who do you have as a key player on this team? Because there's a bunch of them you could choose from.
I think.
I mean, honestly, there's a ton of them.
Xavier Worthy's a big player for the wide receiver room. I think he's going to be key to the season and what they do.
Ewers. I mean, I've got Baron Sorrell. He's a defensive end, junior defensive end. Has all the tools to play in the NFL. 6'4", 262. Has the tools to be a breakout star this year on this Texas team.
He does.
And I think he could be a key for them.
Yep.
Key game. There's a bunch of them. You could pick the Oklahoma game. My key game is at Baylor, September the 23rd. It's an away game.
I think it's huge.
It's in Waco. It's a big rivalry.
Rivalry game, yeah.
And it could be one of the last times that they play.
Yeah, especially with Texas going to the SEC.
Yeah, so Texas is leaving. This could be one of the last times that they go to Waco and play. So Baylor's going to be up for this game, or should be, and the fans will be crazy and wild.
At least should be up for it anyways.
Yeah, I mean, they should be. I would think so. So let's talk about some of their players, man. I mean, my Lord, they got Xavier Worthy. They got tight end Saunders. They got Ewers. They got a linebacker by the name of Jalen Ford. They got this Sorrell guy that I mentioned, Byron Murphy. And, I mean, you just go Mitchell from Georgia. I mean, you just go down the line.
Yeah, it's a loaded room, let me just tell you.
I mean, Arch Manning, okay, is the prize recruit coming in as a freshman this year. And he's third string.
Yep.
Third string. There are two guys that are 5-star in front of him. You know, if Ewers wasn't there, would they start Manning or would they put him in and try? I mean, maybe. But with Ewers there and then the other 5-star kid already, used up his red shirt and stuff. So I don't see any reason why you wouldn't redshirt Arch Manning. You can play up to 4 games. You can put him in, and he can play a little bit and still redshirt.
Yep.
All right. We're going to take a look at their schedule. They start out with a big one with Rice.
Here's the thing.
Sorry, I had to throw that one.
I don't want to say that they're going to win, sir, because every year we do this, and every year they fall flat on their face.
They do, and it's hard to pick them. It really is.
It's difficult.
Then they start out with Rice at home. Then they play at Alabama, and that's going to be a big telltale sign right there.
I'll say this. If they go into Alabama and beat Alabama on the road, we can declare that Texas is back.
Wyoming at home, at Baylor, Kansas at home, Oklahoma and Dallas. Then they have an open date at Houston, BYU at home, Kansas State at home, at TCU, at Iowa State, and Texas Tech at home. So, you look at this schedule.
Yep.
And as much as I hate to say it, man, I mean, 9-3, 10-2 is definitely possible.
It is.
I have their win total set at 9. Can they go over?
It's possible.
I'm going to say that Texas goes 10-2, and I hate to say that. I am never, ever, ever, ever a Texas guy. Okay, not ever. They fall flat every single year.
But their schedule is favorable.
But they have the talent, and I don't trust Sark. I don't trust Sark at all. None, period. And I'm being overly emphatic about this crap, okay?
Yeah.
But I think they have a chance at 10-2, and I hate to say that.
Yeah, I think they do too.
I really do. And the biggest reason why I hate to say it is I don't trust them. I don't trust them or Sark at all. And, I do have them losing at Alabama. That is one of the games that I have them losing.
Yeah.
All right, so this is probably going to be your sleeper team right here. Texas Tech.
Nope, that ain't it. That's not the thing.
What? It can't be one of the other two teams. Come on now.
Yeah, there's another one that's kind of sliding in there.
All right, Texas Tech. They went 8-5 last year, 5-4 in the Big 12. McGuire is in his second year. He was a first-year head coach there. He's actually got Texas Tech in a prime position to make a little noise in the Big 12 this year, I think.
And I tell you too, there's a lot of optimism, especially in the defense. On the defense this year, they're going to be a lot improved. They got experience coming back. The biggest thing with Texas Tech was they allowed 41 sacks last year. That's just it's too much. That can't happen. That's just the offensive line's got to be better. And the big thing about this team, though, is they miss Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And they get Kansas State and TCU at home. Yep. So there's optimism in Lubbock this year, especially from the football side of things.
I think they have to chill on the turnovers.
Yeah, the turnovers is a big problem.
I think they got to chill on the turnovers.
That was the issue all year last year.
I think that's one of their keys to the season. If this team's going to do better than 5-4 in the Big 12, they definitely have to chill on the turnovers.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Top transfer in and biggest loss. Their biggest loss to me was QB Donovan Smith, gone to Houston. But they got a wide receiver by the name of Drake McCray from Austin Peay. And I think he was a big pickup for them and as a wide receiver for them. Key players for Texas Tech. I got their center, Rusty States.
You're all about the centers tonight, ain't you?
I got their center. I do. I got their center. He's a senior, 6'5", 325 pounds. He was an all-conference USA center at Western Kentucky last year.
Yep.
He was at Western Kentucky last year, which is right around the corner for me, actually. And he's a good player. And I think he could come in and kind of solidify that offensive line.
Yep.
And kind of take the Red Raiders where they'd like to go and have a chance to play for the championship.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I have picked a couple of them. I've been offensive line heavy tonight.
Yeah, you're on the hog mollies in that.
I have been offensive line heavy tonight.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. All right, key game. I've got at Baylor October.
Yeah, I think that's a big game because their non-conference schedule is not. It's not the hardest, I don't think.
Yeah, at Baylor, October the 7th. If they want to make a statement game in the Big 12 and have a chance to get in that championship game, I think that's a game they have to go in and win in Waco.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so I was trying to look at the list that I have of their better players. Tyler Show, their quarterback, has got to step up and play.
Yeah, he had a pretty decent year last year.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, or he has. So let's take a look at their schedule.
Think you're looking at
Wyoming.
You're probably looking at 7-8 wins at minimum.
They play at Wyoming, and the second game of the year they do play at home against Oregon. That's their big one, non-conference.
Yeah.
Tarleton State, at West Virginia, Houston at home, at Baylor, Kansas State at home, at BYU, TCU at home, at Kansas, UCF at home, and at Texas.
Yeah, there's a chance there for 7-8 wins to me.
Yeah, I've got them at 7.5 set, and I actually have them going 8-4 is what I have.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I had them.
And I think there's a chance they could actually go 9-3. Really, I really do. I mean,
there's a chance. Yeah.
If they could win that Baylor game, that key game that I was talking about, that might put them over there and get 9-3.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Yeah. Only got 2 teams left.
We got 2 teams left. This one has to be the one you were talking about. UCF is next.
Yes, sir. That's it.
UCF is next. This is their first year in the Big 12.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're going to say something else apparently, but I think it's a big step up from where they've been.
Yeah, but I think they're the type of team that can go to that level, that Power 5 level.
Coming from the AAC, they do have
the strength of this group is up front. They got Ricky Barber and Tremont Morris, Brash return. I feel like the biggest question for UCF to me is the secondary, and most importantly, depth, because depth's a big thing. Wait a second,
it's not Gus Malzahn?
Depth's a big thing in college football. You got to have a little depth. And
I'm surprised it's not Gus.
I think he's done well there. I think he's done well at Auburn.
The Gus bus. You're on the Gus bus?
I'm on the Gus bus.
John Hammonds is on the Gus bus, y'all.
I am, my friend.
I had to say that.
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, brother.
He is on the Gus bus. John Roberts, he finds this out, he's going to have all kinds of stuff to say.
He's probably going, I'm old.
He's an Auburn grad, so
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right, they went 9-5 last year, 6-2 in the AAC last year. Malzahn is 18-9 in 2 years at UCF. Good coach, good offensive coach. He has taken a beating though in some of the stuff with that happened, how he ended it at Auburn. But truthfully,
but he's not. I mean, he's probably one of the better coaches that's been able to compete with Alabama and beat them.
Well, he's not. Yeah, absolutely. He's not. His overall record is 94-47.
I mean, he's not a bad coach. I think there was some bridges that was burned at Auburn, and it just kind of sailed away.
So my key to the season is they have got to run, and keep running the ball. And